Bam, 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 Welcome to Cinema Surfer. So, this is my YouTube channel where I normally talk about movies and do reactions and reviews. However, I wanted to do something a little bit different today. And what I thought is, let me make a video about a movie I'm highly anticipating at the end of this year. And that's Avengers Doomsday. So what I don't want to do is give you a big breakdown on all the plot points and try to, tell you about the storylines I think they're going to adapt and this and that, and try to predict every little thing. I don't want to do that. There's plenty of videos on YouTube like that already. I just want to give you my overall thoughts, and you can decide whether or not you agree or disagree with me. With that being said, I want to do a series of 3 videos. Video number 1 is going to be all preliminary. What are my thoughts and expectations I have about the film before I really see anything? Video number 2 is going to be after I've seen the first trailer. Now, I know they released those small 4 teasers. I figure after the first trailer, I'll be able to give you a little bit more of my thoughts because now I kind of know what storyline they're adapting, and I'm going to be able to know, which characters are interacting and how they're going to tie everything together. Video number 3 is going to be after I've seen the movie. So by that point, I went to the theater, I got my popcorn, I had fun with my family or friends or whoever goes with me. I come home, turn my brain off for a little bit, then I'm going to give you my overall reaction and review of the movie. And then we can kind of talk about how I think it's going to impact the Marvel Universe going forward. Now, all of that being said, let's talk about Marvel for a little bit. I always loved the Marvel characters. They were very endearing to me. Spider-Man specifically, as someone who was kind of nerdy growing up, grew up with their aunt and their uncle. He was my guy. I always found him very relatable. Once I got into high school, I started to kind of change gears a little bit. And I think that's normal. When kids, get to age 13 or 14, whatever that is, when they become freshmen, they start to have different interests and, they expand their horizons. And I think that's a good thing for young people to do. I remember when the very first Avengers movie was coming out, though, and seeing that trailer, I was a little bit skeptical. Around that same time period, there was another big franchise that was becoming popular, and that was Harry Potter. To be honest, I'm not the biggest Harry Potter fan. I appreciate it, and I think it's awesome, and I'm glad certain segments of pop culture have that specific fan base. That's cool. But for me, it was never really something I gravitated towards. However, when I would go to the movie theater, I remember sitting down with, different family members, and they would get really excited because they read the books, and they would start saying things like, wow, I can't believe they were able to adapt this storyline in this way, or they were able to take something that I only could imagine in my brain from the pages, and it was really cool to see that in live action. I never really had that feeling about movies, even with the older Tobey Maguire movies with Spider-Man or the X-Men or anything like that. However, all of that changed when I watched the first Avengers movie. Seeing the Hulk and Thor fight each other, or seeing Iron Man shoot his lasers and they bounce off Captain America's shield. By the way, they took that from a video game called Marvel Ultimate Alliance. Please remake that game. It was awesome. Please, peak. It made me feel like a kid again, and I was really excited to get invested in the Marvel Universe again. It made me want to go back and pick up some of those books I might have skipped over and all of those things. Now, something else that I think the Marvel Cinematic Universe did very well, specifically with the first Avengers and all the movies that came after sequentially, they made them casual viewing experiences for everyday fans. And to be honest, that kind of reminds me of an old Stan Lee take where he would say every comic book might be someone's first comic book. Let's say you're someone who never really watched the Marvel movies, but you really wanted to watch Black Panther and that was your first experience with a superhero movie. That might be really cool for you. And because that movie was kind of a self-contained story, you get everything you need from the beginning, middle, and end. However, it might intrigue you to want to stick around and watch future Marvel movies. And I think Marvel was very, very successful about that. Something I tell young people all the time is Marvel was not always this giant, huge franchise, billion-dollar machine that it is today. And I think it's harder for kids to kind of understand that concept. When I was growing up, you were kind of a nerd if you liked Marvel and if you read comic books and things like that. Today, it's a completely different ballgame, and I think the movies were able to tap into that niche a little bit. Even though I think those things, really made Marvel a success as a brand, I do think, in a way, they've lost sight of that a little bit. And it kind of feels like lately they've focused more on quantity over quality of storytelling. For me, I'm always going to be a comic book fan. I'm going to show up to these movies. I'm used to seeing some things be poorly adapted, and that's fine with me. If they make a bad adaptation of something, that's cool. I'll just wait 5 or 10 years until someone else remakes it. However, if you're a casual fan, if the universe feels too complicated for you and you don't have a solid entry point, it's going to make you want to tune everything out, and then it's just going to be overly complicated. When movies and franchises feel overly complicated, it just makes you want to turn your brain off and close the door and just be like, nah, I'm good. I'd rather read about that movie on Wikipedia or watch someone do a YouTube breakdown video about it. And that is something I'm a little bit worried about going into Avengers Doomsday. In regards to Doomsday itself, I am very curious to see how they're going to tie all of these newer stories together. Some other things that have me worried is how are they going to handle some of the returning characters. For example, in one of those teasers, we pretty much learned that Steve Rogers, the original Captain America, is coming back. Of all the Marvel characters, specifically in the films they've made, I would say Steve Rogers, Captain America, is my favorite. I thought his ending with Endgame was awesome. He gets a chance to go back in time and be with his lady, Peggy Carter, one more time. It's a great way to close the book on his chapter. Him coming back in Avengers Doomsday, though, does make me a little bit nervous. I don't want them to drop the ball with everything they built with that character. Like I said before, he had a great send-off. I hope they're not just bringing him back to bring him back. I'm going to try my best to leave my expectations at the door when I go watch this movie. For all I know, he could be Hydra Captain America and be evil. He might be only in the movie for 5 minutes. He might be a major plot point. You're going to have to wait and see. Now, something else that I'm nervous about, specifically with Steve, is what is his dynamic going to be like with Sam Wilson, the new Captain America? Obviously, both of them, were friends and one passed the suit to the other. But now that Sam has the mantle, I don't want him to be sidelined. And, there's different connotations that go along with that. Specifically, Steve's a white guy and Sam's a black guy. That would be a little bit awkward. Long tangent. But another character I'm a little bit nervous about going into this movie is Doctor Doom.
But even their greatest weapons were as nothing before Doom's power.
To me, Doctor Doom, first and foremost, is a Fantastic Four villain. Okay? Yes, he fights Iron Man sometimes, or Spider-Man, or whatever, but at the end of the day, it's always Mr. Fantastic versus Doctor Doom. And both of them have a cool backstory together. I really hope that Marvel finds a way to tie that stuff into the movie, as opposed to just making it a Doctor Doom versus a Tony Stark movie again. That would be kind of lame, and I'm not really looking forward to seeing that. I also don't want, Doctor Doom to be a Tony Stark variant. It's a weird situation, because when you think about it, like, mathematically, Robert Downey Jr. is a great actor. Robert Downey Jr. did a great job as Iron Man, and Doctor Doom is a fantastic villain. All those three things are great. I don't really know if they're going to mesh very well, so we're going to have to wait and see on that. Last thing that I kind of wanted to talk about with this video is how are they going to handle the X-Men? The X-Men were super popular when I was a kid, and to be honest, they were way more popular than the Avengers. You had characters like Storm, Wolverine, Beast, Cyclops, Magneto, Nightcrawler. They were awesome. The X-Men are coming back in this movie. However, they're kind of trying to tie it into the older X-Men franchise, I guess. I don't really know how that's going to work too well. I think at this point, if you want to make the X-Men cool again, you just have to recast them. I'm kind of tired of going back and revisiting these older characters from a previous franchise. I think it's time to do something different. And if you want, the X-Men to be this long-lasting franchise again, then you're going to have to reboot it so a younger audience can attach themselves to newer characters or newer actors playing these characters. I don't know how it's going to play seeing these older X-Men characters come back. But yeah, those are my overall thoughts on Avengers Doomsday. I'm a little bit skeptical, but I'm also a little bit excited at the same time. And I think most fans are kind of with me on that. So I'm not in the boat alone. Maybe it's a good thing that Marvel kind of has a little bit of pressure on them they can feel that fire underneath their booty a little bit, and it might help them make the best product, for the consumer and for the fans as well. We really want to support the brand, give us something to fall in love with again. I'll do a second video once the first trailer comes out. Maybe my wife might join me on that one so you can hear some of her thoughts as well going into this movie. Remember to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know when the next video is coming out. And for whatever reason, if you see that hype button wherever it is on the YouTube screen, try clicking that as well. It would help us out a lot. Peace out. Have a good one. See you in the next video.